The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Alrighty, hello everyone, and good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're at. Thank you for joining us today for our Exit Planning Summit live webinar on chasing market relevance with our speaker today, Dan Negroni. He is a keynote speaker and the founder and CEO of Launchbox, as well as an author of Chasing Relevance, the 6 steps to understand, engage, and maximize next generation leaders in the workplace. Before I turn it over to Dan, just a few housekeeping notes from myself. First off, my name is Drew English. I'm the program coordinator here at the Exit Planning Institute. If you have any questions during the webinar, there's a chat box on your drop-down menu of GoToWebinar. Please just go ahead and type a question in there. That will alert both myself and Dan that there's a question or a comment, and we'll definitely make sure to hit on that note. Also, the webinar will be recorded today. The recording will be sent out later today, so look for an email from myself with the attachment of the recording. And when you get that, just choose to download the full file so you can listen to the call in its entirety. So with that, I'm going to just go ahead and tee up Dan here, who's going to speak to us on chasing market relevance. So Dan, it's all you.
Hey, thank you, Drew. Thank you for putting it all together for us. And so thank you guys for having me. I'm honored to be able to speak to your group. I am passionate about this cause, as you will see, and we're going to jump right in. As a housekeeping matter, just to echo what Drew said, I love participation and I love integrated presentations. So you ask yourself, Dan, why are you doing a webinar? Because they're more conducive to you speak and people listen, and at the end they ask you questions. Anyway, we're gonna try and use the chat function so we make this about you. I've given this presentation over a few hundred times, and really the only outcome I'm looking for is that you guys get the value you need. So at any time, please ask a question and we will dodge and weave and try and make it completely relevant to what you're looking at for your business. So let's set up the problem and the unique problem that we're solving. So the world is incredibly disconnected. And one of the things that's really disconnected is the way we communicate between generations. And that's been a problem for eons. I think Socrates complained about Plato. And so we've been having a challenge between youth and experience for a long, long time. But the truth is, where they meet and where we create great mentorships is where all the relevance is where the market relevance occurs, and much more important in the nature of the business that you guys do. And particularly the statistics, I think, are as follows, and I'm sure you guys are well aware of it, and gals, which is $10 trillion will transfer from one generation to another in the next 10 years or 9 years. 4.1 million businesses will be affected. Most people house most of their wealth within their businesses. And 60% of boomers are ready to retire pretty soon and transfer their business. And so the challenge is this, that you already know, is that only 20% of them will have a plan and will be effective in the transfer of that business, which creates a diminution in value to the other 80%. And the question is, how can we as service providers figure out a way to provide value to connect the generations so that the communication is better, and so that the transfer of this wealth happens in a much better way. And so I just want to take you back to kind of, we're experts in the generational conflict, and we focus both on employees and on customers. And millennials, which just to give you a definition, are about 22 or 23 to 37 years old. Born between 1980 and 1996, and then after them is this, what they call Generation Z. And while they're a little bit dissimilar, they're mostly similar in the biggest thing that has changed our country and our world, quite frankly, recently, which has compounded what I believe this millennial issue. Does anyone want to chat an answer to what they think that is? I know the answer, and I think it's a pretty apparent answer, but if you want to start chatting so I can see the function works. But the answer is technology. technology has really, really changed and confirmed the access of information. And so we have a lot of young people that have access to information, and they equate knowledge with experience. And as we all know, knowledge and experience may be two different things. So the question is, Dan, if that's the challenge, how do we communicate better within families to transfer this wealth? What's your experience at dealing with it? And so let me just give you a little bit of background about what we get the privilege of doing every day. We've trained about 12,000 millennials and many of their managers in the workplace over the past 4 years. We've had a laboratory to understand the communication efforts on both sides and what the challenges are. Matter of fact, yesterday I was at a concert at the park here in Southern California, San Diego, beautiful weather. And one of the guys said, "Oh, I love what you do. I love your Instagram. I love your LinkedIn. I love all the things you talk about. But God, isn't there just a pill to give these millennials or Gen Z so we can just talk to them?" And, I hear that all the time. There is no pill, but there's good old-fashioned rules that hopefully you're going to leave here with the answers of how to do it. And the reason is that guy was an employer of probably 10 millennials in commercial real estate, and he's having a challenge managing them. So we've worked with lots of financial advisors, lots of lawyers, lots of accountants to figure out how to connect the generations of their teams, how they speak well, how to connect families, to communicate and have solutions for the transfer of wealth, and even how to teach organizations to sell to the different generations. Because I don't know if you know this, I think UBS, who's one of our clients, has a statistic in one of their papers, which is 4% of millennials or the next generation will choose their parents' financial advisor. That's a big problem with this big transfer of wealth, and if we can solve it, we win. And so my hope for you today is to get some tips and tools on how to solve it. And really, I'm going to tell you this, that there's only one big secret to figuring this out, and that is mindset. You got to shift your mindset to understand how to provide value to other people that speak a different language. We can talk about why they speak a different language. We can talk about all the things that are contributing, but at the end of the day, it's our tolerance to use great tools to create that communication and have a mindset that is unlike my friend at the park last night that said, "Just give me a pill." Well, it's about hard work. So what's going on in the world? Let's look at the slides. Millennial power is huge and strong, and Gen Z is right behind them as another very big generation. They're 83 million strong in the US alone, 2.4 billion of the world's population. 60% of the world's population is under the age of 30, and they're about 40% of our workforce, growing to 75% in the next 10 years. So if we look on the consumer side, the statistics are even more interesting. They're controlling 660 billion in spend. Even at home, kids are deciding what houses to buy, what vacations to go on, what cars to buy with their parents. They're their own brand and they have a voice at the table. And as we talked about, all that money is going to transfer from one generation to another. So people that think millennials or Gen Zs want all the power, I find it dead wrong. I think they are the power, and that they're the power of the future. And they're pretty cool and great. So with all that background, there's still a huge disconnect. And we're polarized. In the workplace, actually, it's really funny because at the water cooler, you would never hear people talk about any other diverse group. So we'll talk about age all the time at the water cooler. They're entitled, they're disloyal, they don't have the same work ethics. They'll leave one job to go to another. They really don't care about productivity. I don't understand how to communicate with them. They really don't want to work hard, so on and so forth. We would never talk that way about a female or about a black or an Asian or anything like that, but we're free to talk about this problem all the time. And again, I think it's compounded because of technology. In the workplace, you'll see that actually today there's 6 generations in the workplace. Never before have we had great-grandparent and grandchild in the workplace together. People are working longer, and we got this big disconnect. And as you see, the traditionalists and baby boomers will be transferring all their businesses to the next generation, who they don't quite trust yet. And quite frankly, that generation doesn't trust us. And I think the way we behave and the way I see it when I get to do these keynotes all around the country and world is I think we don't trust each other. And I'm going to use a technical term here. I think we suck at figuring out how to create some common ground in communication. But because I am, and basically you can go and have any workplace expert and I can do the pitch too, or the workshop on how each generation is different. But quite frankly, I'm going to give you this as a mindset. We're all humans, we're all people, and we're just trying to solve how to connect with each other. And it's a lot easier than putting us all in buckets. And there are Gen Ys that love diversity, millennials that love diversity, and there are boomers that love diversity. And there are millennials that are ambitious and relationship driven. Believe me, in the 12,000 we've trained, we see a ton of them. And you know, when we can connect them and stop thinking of buckets and start thinking about who's the person in front of us that's a human being that's different, we're all human, we start to see performance shift and high performers shift. And the same thing is true with clients. So every single thing we're talking about, from employer to employee, which is value you can also give your clients, and understanding that, is the same from business owner to customer. So there's a lot of value in understanding this generational conflict that can sell more products, make communication better, transition businesses easier, and have better working relationships with service providers. So really it's about how much you're willing to want to learn and listen to. And so let's talk a little bit about it, because I believe that's the opportunity for success. Millennials are not a challenge or a problem we need to solve this next generation. They're an opportunity to create success for all these families that transition their business. And you guys understanding how to help people do that, learning some of the tools that we're talking about, is really important. So let's just talk a little bit about this millennials in the workplace, and even with, when we look at transferring businesses from one generation to another, they may see that younger people are disengaged in the workplace because older people want to force them to work in the way they worked. Now with technology, you can work at any time at night, you can work remotely, you can do things differently. Just different. Not bad or worse, just different. But because we want them to do it our way, there's a large part of disengagement. And that disengagement is costing businesses a ton of money. So 70% of millennials in the workplace are disengaged. $450 billion is what Gallup cites the cost to that. So the question is, how are we going to help businesses solve the problem? And how are we going to help advise businesses to understand the problem and learn the problem? So, and they're also quitting their jobs. And by the way, young people, when they quit or they go to do something else, or they don't want to work for a family business, or they don't see eye to eye, they're usually quitting their bosses, which is the number one reason to quit, which means they're quitting all the people that we're advising. And so we have to understand that it's our job to teach those people that they're quitting them because of something they're doing. And if they shift their behavior, the young person will shift their behavior as well. And both sides need to meet in the middle. This is not just a manager or people with the money problem, owner problem, operator problem versus employee problem. It's everyone's problem, because where we find the generations can connect is where we're really going to kick some butt. So let's talk a little bit about the myths, and we'll go through them super quickly. Let me stop here and ask you guys again, any questions or comments on the statistics, what we've found, anything at this point. Happy to answer anything, or about perspective, what we've seen. We train college kids on skills, so we're seeing it from every single angle. Okay, so no questions at this point. Yeah, look, there are lots of myths about millennials that are out there, and if we were in a room, we would actually have you guys call all these out. Lack of organizational loyalty, a sense of entitlement, especially with the transition of businesses, a lack of patience for the transition of business. Come on, dad or mom, or older generation, it's time for us to run it. You don't understand what's going on. There's social media, there are different ways to approach clients. We're not getting it, so on and so forth. So not dealing well with authority and thinking they have all this knowledge that they can solve the problem, and maybe not wanting to hear some of the experience. Having a different sense of work-life balance and purpose. And millennials are really actually, and digital natives, Gen Z, if you want to call them digital natives as a group, they really do want to change the world. And so they're pushing up in a very different way, which is super, super cool. And it's pushing us to be better and stronger and more purposeful. A lot of purpose-based investment decisions, wealth planning, including purpose and community, are coming out of what they want to do to help the world, which is awesome. Just a different metric at looking at money and the way you transfer it and the way you use it to do good. But these are the things that they're saying about it. And I usually ask, hey, is this all true? And sometimes you get yes, sometimes you get no, but really the truth of the matter is some of it's true, some of it's not true. But the truth is they're saying stuff about us too. And there are lots of myths about our generation. We're not tech savvy, we don't recognize others, we're only in it for the money, we're afraid of non-traditional approaches, we inflexible, don't like change, we're not willing to trade stability for pursuit of true passion, don't care about our people, and then we live by our own golden rule, which is we got the gold, we make the rules, sit down, shut up, listen to what I say. There's a great clip that we usually show when we can show video about Don Draper yelling as his secretary is, you get a paycheck, you should be thanking me and Jesus every day that you get a paycheck. What are you complaining about? And so that attitude doesn't play well anymore. And so the truth is, we're not all only in it for the money. We're not all inflexible. Our clients are not. And so some of this is true and some of this is not true. But the truth of the matter is, we just got to stop it. None of that is productive. And we got to find the tools to figure out how to connect and talk to people about all of these issues that are important in the transition of this wealth from one generation to the other. And so what we've done is we created a system to engage and connect people. And I know that sounds like a bunch of soft bullshit, and millennials do like soft stuff, but more importantly, it only is a system and you only stay in business if it works. And what we found is, both with millennial employees and millennial customers, is that if you train them on mad skills for themselves, because that's their favorite topic, all of our favorite topic is ourselves, but especially when we're younger, if you train them on skills for themselves, about how to understand themselves, how to articulate value, how to make it about others, these real soft skills, which, by the way, we're not teaching in high school, we're not teaching in college, we're not teaching at the MBA level, and then we're not teaching in the workplace. If you create a system, they really morph much more easily than the older generation, because they're used to shifting mindset, and they will buy into seeing, hey, it's not all about me. Those statements are all about me. How do I start to change my communication to get together? And so we've created the system that's based on understanding relationships, the first relationship with themselves, and then the relationship with the rest of the world. And it's super cool. And so it works when you treat millennial employees like this, and it works when you treat millennial customers like this. And more importantly, when you're talking about transitions of business, the training of the younger or the next generation by the older generation is what they really want to do. Millennials want guides. Matter of fact, most of them have been told their whole life, you can be the king, you can be the queen, you can be the president, here's a trophy for tying your shoe, you can do anything you want to do. But at the end of the day, they hear all that stuff and they believe some of it, but they're more like, really? Are you joking? Are you kidding? I'm going to be the next living leader of the world. How do I figure that out? And so 86% of millennials are optimistic about the future when they did this survey, a big Viacom survey, a media-based survey. 76% of the same subset have no idea how they're going to create their future. And so there's this huge gap that needs to be filled of how to connect with your millennial customers and millennial employees where we're doing nothing about it. Just like only 20% have a plan to deal with the transition of power or wealth, most people do not have a plan to coach and guide. Someone made a comment, doesn't this all come back to emotional intelligence? And so I love the comments, and let's keep making them. Yeah, everything comes back to, you'll see what I believe is the #1 life work skill. In a minute, we'll have a slide on that. But everything comes back to the ability to build relationships. And so the question is emotional intelligence innate, or can it be taught? And the answer to that question for me is yes. Some people have it more innately than others, and some don't, but it can be taught. It can be taught super well, and that's part of the services that you're supposed to do when you're figuring out how to explain and how to communicate about tax plans and all those other things. And so don't be this guy with your head stuck in the sand. Have a level of emotional intelligence, certainly, with your clients, and try and offer resources which teach them to encourage that and figure out how they can communicate, because it's really about communication. And so we have a system. We wrote a book, and I'd be happy to share it with any of you if you want to send your email afterwards, or if you're coming to the summit in September, we'll certainly bring copies of our book. We have a 6-step system, and this is it. It's called the Bridge system, and you can see each of the acronyms here. BRIDGE is Bridge. And busting myths is, look, let's just start assuming positive intent, and let's stop with all the labels and nonsense, and let's get in there and really figure it out. And I can give you story after story. I'll give you a story of a quick story of a law firm, big law firm in the world, actually one of the largest in the world, said, I have a great story for you, managing partner says, about millennials. I have this great millennial, they work for me, they're super on everything, they research really well, they help with everything, and I go to court one day, and we have this big motion, and I get there, and he's looking super slick in his too tight shirt with no socks, and really skinny ankles, and he's not wearing a tie, and we're in front of the friggin' judge. And I'm like, really? She said, but I didn't have time to do with that. I just went to the front of the table. And co-counsel had flown down to San Diego from San Francisco, was sitting there, of course, with a tie on. And we finished the motion in front of the judge, and the kid's name, who didn't have the tie, the associate's name was Tony. And the co-counsel says to her, who's with his tie, says, can you believe Tony? And she goes, no, I can't believe Tony. Can you believe him? And she's just about to start ripping him a new one about the tie, and the guy says, I know, I forgot my tie at the house, and he just took the tie off his neck and gave me his tie. So assuming positive intent and busting the myths that all millennials suck is really critical, and that's just a silly, funny story about it. #2 is we gotta be authentic. Millennials and the whole world is so tired of fake news, too much news, being told what to buy when you get on Google after you looked at a pair of shoes, and we gotta be authentic. Also, the next generation wants us to be real with them. They want us to guide them and teach them in a right way about what's right and tell them the truth, instead of selling them a bill of goods. And we, again, that technical term, we suck at being direct in our communication. Owning our own stuff is our management style, our mindset, our judgments, all those things, and shifting. And the same is true of the next generation. We got to teach them to own their own stuff. And oh, wow, that sounded an awful lot about you, that you wanted to go to Stagecoach concert and take off the Monday after and the Friday before when we had a big deal to work on. Maybe we figure out how it helps our entire workforce, and next time you can go, or something like that. And then really always focusing on delivering value and teaching young people that they'll get it to others. We call it with them. understanding that the world is focused and all our clients are focused in what's in it for me with them. But the secret to succeeding is with them, what's in it for the client, just like you guys. What you want to know, ask me. I will tell you from our research what we've been able to gather and garner and how it will help you in your business. So ask those questions, and we'll get to you. Goals in mind, having common goals, and then empowering success is about creating a culture of mentorship and coaching, not only between your organizations, but between you and your clients, which is what you do as a service provider. And this platinum rule that these companies get that are super successful, millennials want to buy from them, millennials want to work for, they live by the platinum rule. Does anyone know what the platinum rule is? If you want to chat it, I'd love to see if anyone, I know you know what the regular golden rule is, which is treat others the way you want to be treated. Well, that's not good enough, and it's certainly not good enough with this generation, and it's something you can explain to your clients. The platinum rule that these clients get is you need to treat people the way they want to be treated. And I think that's the biggest mindset shift. Most of us and most of the boomers trying to transition their businesses, I've done it this way, that's why they need to do it this way. And really the truth to teach them is, hey, 30%, I mean, what happened 30 years ago is not very relevant today. But what is relevant is what's relevant today and how we're going to do this and what other people think. So whether it's your wife, whether it's your husband, whether it's your children, treat them the way they want to be treated, and you'll be much better off than treating them. And that's the biggest mindset tip, and probably one of the biggest takeaways I'd love for you to take, is really thinking about, am I demonstrating that? And that's probably the height of emotional intelligence. So do you really get what they want? Let me give you the secrets about what they want in all of our research. Not only the Pew reports, Deloitte's report, University of North Carolina's report on millennials, Viacom's report, everyone's report, plus our direct independent research of these 12,000 millennials are the most important thing to them is capability and growth. They want to learn mad skills to be better, to create a better world, and to make more money for themselves and for others. And so if you give people that gift, and so it sounds like and looks like, what are we doing in training if we're transferring businesses to make that happen? To really make sure that the next generation understands that we're teaching them. We're listening, but we're teaching, right? We're teaching them in the platinum rule. Most people are overwhelmed in the workplace. If you want to know about learning, they have about 24 extra minutes a week to learn new stuff. So thank you for sitting into this webinar. And they want micro learning, which is quick doses of learning and then to practice it. They don't want the long workshops anymore. They want to be practitioners. And so we got to understand that about them. They want trust and authenticity. And they want a lot of feedback and communication and transparency. Who doesn't? Who doesn't want all these things? I mean, these are things we all want. And then they want purpose. They do like to be paid. They like to have health insurance, and they like flexibility and work-life balance. But these are really the four things. They want to be grown, and who can blame them? And the better we are at teaching our clients that that's the transition of wealth, to guide and grow in a way that serves the other person using the platinum rule, and that we adopt the mindset that we can't change how they receive it, but we can certainly change the way we offer it. And usually when we change the way that we offer it, they receive it a lot better and great things happen. So what do we do to attract this transfer of wealth and great communication? What are we going to do to align ourselves better so we can do these things? What are we going to do to communicate, engage, and retain all this young talent, so we pay homage to it? So where youth and experience meet is where magic happens, and we can bump that number up from 4% to 70% want to use their parents' advisor, or we can bump up the number from 20% to 50 or 70% of the people have plans to transfer their business, great plans that you guys have helped them design. So here are the things. In terms of attracting, what I'm talking about and what do we message to them? And so I think it's incumbent upon us as a tip for you guys as key trusted advisors to describe to them that communication and relationship building and emotional intelligence, those are the most important things they need to do and can do, and should be doing, and give them some tools or tips on how to do that. And there are many tips on how to do that, as you've seen, putting yourself in their shoes, understanding what their goals are, mostly about communication. So we got to attract our customers by using this language that we have a solution and that it's simple, not easy to apply, but simple, right, to understand. And maybe even what I love is we created a system to teach people about themselves, right, young millennials, so they can be high performers in the workplace and connect with the next generation and vice versa. What is your system? And it'd be really interesting to look at. What's your particular system when you go out to clients to explain that this is part of the great value that you offer? So do you have a systematic approach? And does it explain we start with communication, or we start with an assessment? Here's what the assessment is, all those things. The assessment is bi-generational in terms of, speaking to both sides and the language you use. So then you have to make sure that both sides are aligned and their interests are aligned. And that is really about this type of mini assessment. What are both sides looking to get out of it? How do we suit both sides? How do we help both sides? And what is the assessment you're giving that's going to help them figure out how to connect these generations to communicate, which is the next thing, which is really, what are the tools that you're using to communicate? And if I was in a room with you guys and we were polling you, I know the best thing you would come up with is open dialogue, open conversation. But really the best thing I can offer you to take away is phenomenal questions. Teaching both sides to ask phenomenal questions about the other that are focused on how each side serves the others. So really helping them, or maybe being a facilitator of communication, because when we go into workplaces and we're trying to design a system that helps both sides communicate, we're really just a facilitator and having the dialogue. And so, where we seat them, when we put them together, when we're doing workshops, when we take them apart, when we bring them back together, and we make them think about the negative and then the positive, is all super intentionally designed to create a result in the end that is this positive feedback. And if anyone wants to talk about, I'll offer you guys a free coaching session at the end, but you can call me and we can talk about how would you do that? How would you create this system? And then how would you design some of these subparts of the system to go in and really describe to a client why your unique service proposition to them is different than someone else's, and how you're going to take that problem I elucidated at the beginning and solve it for them. And that's kind of the value you bring to them. All about communication. And someone who asked, is this about emotional intelligence? Here's my question to you. What's the most important life work skill? Love to hear answers of it. I can tell you through all those keynotes that I've been honored enough to be able to do, that the answer usually, number one answer is communication, which is certainly a part of it, right? I just have that as the heading. Number two answer is usually listening. I get perseverance, I get grit, I get empathy. But what I believe is the single most important life work skill is the ability to build relationships. And that's because we're human creatures, and humans do everything in groups or with other people. And especially in the transition of wealth, you got to have two sides. And same thing with managing employees. And so you got to learn to build relationship skills. And again, I don't think we're teaching them well enough. And the question is, how does your organization, or how do you teach your client's organization to use the system to create those authentic, caring relationships with your team and clients? Because as John Maxwell says, no one cares about how much you know until they know about how much you care. And I think that I'm going to push back on you guys too, is if your system demonstrates that you care about your client in a way that is really real, and you have their back, and you understand the statistics and the problem we're trying to solve up front, and you can communicate that you have a system for it, and you can teach them about some of the tools, books, things they can buy to build these relationships or express or have some of these conversations, they can really win and win in a big way. And you are principally concerned, your mindset is understanding what they need to be treated with and how, and you're going to deliver it to them. And if you do that, they will engage with you and they will continue to engage with you and they will send you friends, your clients. And if you do this with millennials as well, this next generation, and you have this culture that you can help your clients create, which is the same thing you're doing, trusted advisor, guide, you can create that both in the workplace and in the services that you're offering to them. Because that's the way it should be, and that's the way organizations grow and thrive and take on all the transitions. I think in the next 10 years, 75% of the S&P 500 will churn. I think the average tenure of an S&P 500 company now is like 18 years and going shorter, from something like, I think, 61 years in 1958. So the world is so different. So how are we going to create engagement with them to deal with all that innovation and the way business is changing? If you do that, and you can tell them and create a system and show them how to communicate and get along and pick and plan and do all those things, the next biggest thing in your system and the last thing in your system and in our system is, how do you sustain it? How do you sustain this conversation? Because it's not a snapshot. It's not a moment in time. It's a lifelong endeavor to be able to continue to communicate, because there'll be another generation behind that. There'll be new people. Everyone has a challenge every day. Business cycles, the economy cycles. So how do we sustain it? And I'm telling you, the system has to be really focused on creating, and maybe you can even do this for your clients, where not only can you help them coach and mentor and guide themselves, but you can do it for them. And you can be the person on demand that they call to reset every time they need, or even better, you teach them how to do that. So if you do that, I can promise you, you'll get results. So your big takeaways, I think, today are the dilemma of the challenge. There is a way to solve it. It relates to communication. It relates to understanding. It relates to relationship building and deep question asking. Nothing's new that I've told you. This generation is a little bit different. Technology has changed them, shaped them. They want more. They deserve more. They know more. You guys get it. But apply the platinum rule. Treat them the way they want to be treated, and you'll have much better relationships with them. This works with your kids, with your customers, with anyone. And so people read our book and say, oh, I finally understand my kids and I get along with them, or I finally do this and that. And so, it's really, I know it sounds soft, but I'm telling you it works. It's not like we've reinvented the wheel. There's Ken Blanchard in here, Tony Robbins in here, Patrick Lencioni, Mel Robbins, the 5-second rule. Every single thing that we've developed in our system, we've taken and borrowed. Dale Carnegie, Napoleon Hill, all those premises, they may have been born since the beginning of their time, but they work. And so if you want to solve that gap, and if you want to bridge it, it's pretty simple. You need to be able to help and guide people by understanding what they need from you. With that, I will take questions. And Drew, if you're getting any questions and you want to pop on and tell me, that'd be great too.
Yeah, Dan, thanks. As of right now, there's nothing there, but folks still on the call, if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and please type those in so we could field those for Dan. But in the meantime, I'll kind of just jump in here and mention to everyone that Dan will be one of our keynote speakers at our summit in Nashville at the end of September, on September 24th and 25th. Dan will be talking on the Tuesday, the 25th, about the millennial race and how to address the cross-generational conflict. And so this was very interesting to me, Dan, being a millennial and all, but I'm very excited for your keynote speech at the summit as well. And folks, if you're looking for more information on the summit, a couple ways to kind of see kind of the agenda and who's going to be speaking and kind of the summaries of each talk, you could visit exitplanningconference.com, and on there has everything, the venue, the agenda, everything to expect for the summit. Or you can reach out to me directly, and I could get you some details as well. So please don't hesitate to reach out. We are almost sold out, and the early bird pricing for the summit actually ends at the end of June here. So please take advantage if you plan on attending the summit as well. It looks like we had one question or a couple questions here come in, Dan. So I'll go ahead and read these off to you.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So the comment is, we completely agree that authentic curiosity is a critical skill for any advisor. How do you become a great interviewer? Asking phenomenal questions, ? Or maybe what is an example of a phenomenal question?
Yeah, so we actually do a whole exercise on the power of the question and what a good question looks like. So good questions are open-ended, they are future-casted, they are real, they challenge, like the challenger methods of sales, and most importantly, they've listened, or they understand the most important part of the question is who is the audience? And so doing your homework first is a really big tool that we would use as well. But really open-ended questions. So for example, what do you want your legacy to be? What are you trying to accomplish with your wealth? What do you want people to say about you? But really, deep questions. What would you what do you want your kids to be able to do or not do? How do you want the legacy of your business to continue? But really, deep questions. And how do you teach that? I think I'm going to stick with what we know our system is, which is we teach people about themselves, and then we teach them how to tell their story. And by understanding their story, we teach them very clearly it's not about them, because the way we teach the story, we actually have 5 or 6 people present stories to each other. And what happens when you do that is people give each other feedback, and they realize that curiosity about the story and how to help someone else about perfecting their story is almost more important than doing your story. And by demonstrating to people that they can teach that comment and great question asking through some type of growth course, lets them understand what tools they need to do for themselves to ask themselves questions, as well as what they would go out and share with others. So we've designed a course where it is we like to do it in a group, and we do it by doing it, practicing it, and then demonstrating your value to others by giving what you're going to be doing, and kind of teaching the teacher, or teaching you how to teach it.
Perfect. Thanks, Dan. I appreciate that. Give me 1 second here to see if another question comes in. Alrighty, well, looks like that's it for the conversation today. But if anyone has any additional questions that they want to take offline, please feel free to reach out to me by sending me a note, and I'll make sure that Dan gets that question or comment. We can definitely take it offline as well. So with that, we'll go ahead and conclude the webinar today, though. Dan, thank you very, very much for spending some time with us today and kind of going through this and kind of give us a little bit of a sneak peek of what to expect at the summit in Nashville at the end of September. So I greatly appreciate you spending some time with us today. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Like I said at the beginning, I will send out the recording, so just look for an email from me later today with that attachment to it. And then again, if you want more information on the summit, please go to exitplanningconference.com, and we can definitely and help you out as well if you have any questions like that. So Dan, thank you very, very much. I look forward to meeting you in person in Nashville.
Likewise. Yep.
And
Thanks,
we'll go ahead and conclude the call. Thanks, everybody.
Perfect. Thanks.